Everyone is an expert at something. My goal is to make sure, look, you're going to get this email. It's going to take you 7 seconds to read. Once you read it, you're either going to reply or you're going to delete it, and you're going to go on with your day. I will not take more than 20 seconds a day from you, right? But in those 20 seconds, you could wind up on the front page of the Wall Street.
So you are literally rebuilding this thing.
Legally, I'm building something newer and better.
Of course.
all my screw-ups in my life, everything I did wrong and everything I did right, were both a product of my ADHD. And all my success was because of my neurodiversity.
What you just described can work very well for an entrepreneur.
You hire people who love the roles that you have for them. When things are good, don't always assume they're going to stay good. And number two, if you're having a lot of fun and you're at the point where you think, okay, it's time for things to move on.
Peter Shankman, it is good to see you. Thank you so much for carving out time.
Good to be here, man. Good talking to you.
I knew you originally from HARO, Help a Reporter Out. I want to talk about your experience with that and then kind of fast forward to today, because you're doing a bunch of cool stuff today as well. But let's start with kind of what brought you to creating that platform in the first place. What's your background and how'd you get into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I started my career, graduated Boston University with a journalism degree, and was pursuing journalism, photojournalism, and fashion and portrait photography in California when I lost my financial aid. The government sent me a letter that said, your parents make too much money, we're taking away your financial aid. And I sent the government a letter that said they do make too much money, but they keep it. And the government didn't find that funny. So I moved back to New York City, where I was born and raised, and was hanging out in the chat room. This is the mid-'90s. For your younger audience, a chat room is like Twitter, but without the Nazis, and it would take a lot longer. You'd type something, you'd go get a slice of pizza, you'd come back, someone would type something back to you. And that's what we did in the 90s instead of dating. And I was hanging out in one of these chat rooms. Someone there said, hey, my company's trying to build a newsroom. Why don't you submit your resume? I said, sure, I have no experience. That'll be great. And learned sarcasm doesn't translate well on the internet, and was hired to become one of the first founding editors of the America Online newsroom. So back when AOL was the internet, I launched it. I launched AOL News with like 3 or 4 other journalists, and we sort of made up everything as we went along. It was a lot of fun. AOL had a mass layoff, their first ever mass layoff, and they lost about 90% of their content people. I was one of them. Moved back to New York. So I take the second job at a magazine. I'm an associate editor. Yeah, and I'm expecting on site in this magazine, and they have 8:45 a.m. meetings and 9:30 meetings and 10:45 meetings, and I'm like, wow, this is nothing like AOL. At AOL, we could work any way we wanted as long as we got the job done, and they didn't care. And all of a sudden, I have to be here every second and sit in meetings, and I didn't know I had ADHD at the time, and I'm like, this is Russia. I can't do this, and I quit. And I said, I got to go out on my own. And I had all this experience from the internet working at AOL and how to create news and craft stories. And I said, I'm going to start a PR firm. My parents thought I was nuts. You have no experience. You've never worked for anyone doing that. I'm like, yeah, sure, it'll be fun. And launched a PR firm at the height of the dot-com boom. Started the dot-com boom called the Geek Factory. In like 6 months, we had like 10 employees. We were repping Napster, Juno, AOL. I had no idea what I was doing, but all this money was flowing in, and we had a blast. And I wound up selling the agency right before the dot-com crash. I sold it to a larger agency, and I walked away. And that was my first sort of big lesson, which is when things are good, number one, don't always assume they're going to stay good. And number two, if you're having a lot of fun and you're at the point where you think, okay, it's time for things to move on, that's not necessarily always a bad thing, right? I know way too many people who spend all their time, okay, things are great, I'm going to stay right where I'm doing, I'm not going to change anything. And that tends to lead to complacency, which is your first step to failure. Don't be afraid to basically walk away from the blackjack table when you're up.
There's a lot more in that relative to cycles, timing. Right now you look at copywriters, designers, et cetera, and there's writing on the wall for it being the right time to move to something else. But there's also just the notion of know you're ahead and explore something else. What was it that made you want to transition?
That's the thing also is that, I've learned, and this is again, before I got diagnosed, I learned very quickly that what I love, I'm really good at, and what I don't love, I'm terrible at. And that became sort of this sort of way to learn, okay, if I want to build this PR firm, right now I'm being offered a decent amount of money for it. I'm 28 years old at the time. I could walk away with this cash and basically chill for at least 3 or 4 years if I want to and not have to worry. But if I don't want to do that and I want to grow it to like 10 times the size of what it was, well, then I have to start hiring people, and hiring not just PR people like myself, but HR people. And we got to improve insurance, and we have to do this. And that didn't sound like fun at all.
Yeah, like learn how to run a business.
Yeah, I don't want to do that shit. So,
right.
So I walked, and I had a nice payout, and I walked away. I went to Asia. Problem was, I went to Asia. This is like 2001. I went to Asia. I'm like, I'm gonna take a year off. This is like June of 2001. And like 2 weeks later, like mid-July, I'm in Bangkok, and I realized I'm bored senseless. I called my mom. I said, I'm flying home. She's like, why? You're supposed to stay a year. I'm like, hey, you never taught me how to relax. It's your fault. And I hung up the phone. But I came home and started consulting. And I was consulting for several years. And a lot of that, I got a lot of keynote speaking and a lot of doing all this stuff. And all that stuff led to being on a plane all the time. And if you're on a plane next to me, unless you fake your death, I'm going to know everything about you by the time we land.
Oh, God.
Right? I'm not going to bother you, but I'm going to let you talk. Right? Most people on planes are afraid the person next to them is going to talk their ear off. I don't say a word. I'm going to let you talk. Right? And if you don't want it, that's cool. But if you start talking, I'm just going to let you keep talking. I'm going to learn everything about you.
How do you engage that?
Where you headed? What takes you there? Work? Cool. What do you do? At no point do I say, yeah, I'm going there for work. I do this. This is me. I have a dog. I have a kid. I just ask questions. We live in a world where the majority of people meet someone and they get quiet while the other person's talking, not because they're interested, but because they're waiting for the other person to shut up so they can start talking. And I always find that fascinating, because if you simply talk and let someone else talk and actually take an interest in what they're saying, they're so starved for that they're just going to talk to you. And I've had 6-hour conversations where I've said maybe 15 words, and I just let them do the talking. And the cool thing about that is I built this incredible Rolodex. I know the guy who makes 97% of the shoelaces in the United States, right? I know it's just random people. I met a guy with the exact same name as me on a flight once, which is really weird. The flight attendant came over, both in first class. Mr. Shankman? We're both like, yes. And we're like, don't be a dick. He's like, Peter Shankman. We're both like, yes, don't be a dick. You're kidding. There's another Peter Shankman out there. So it's those sort of random, things that happen when you just shut up and let other people talk. And so I built this huge Rolodex, and I was still doing some PR and consulting, whatever. And reporters knew that I knew a lot of people, because reporters would start calling and they'd, oh yeah, I got your name from someone at the Times. I'm doing a story on blah, blah, blah. I work for the Post. Who who does it? And over time, I realized there's got to be a better way to do this, because it's taking my entire day. And so I started a Facebook group, and the Facebook group blew up, and I turned it into a mailing list, and the mailing list turned into 3 emails a day from reporters, blew it up to a couple 100,000 people, 250,000 people, and sold it 3 years later to a company called Vocus, now Cision. I've been hearing for the past year that HARO is not at all what it was when I was running it. And I kept ignoring that, because you can't go home again. So I thought. People kept calling me and emailing me and asking me, hey, can you help? Can you make this better? Can you improve this? Much to my, I want to say, dismay, 3 months ago, I launched something called sourceofsources.com, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the HARO reincarnate. It's the newest. It's a better version of what I first built. I'm running it just like I ran the first one. So I'm being very, you mess up, you pitch a journalist off topic, you use AI, you're gone. Right. And that's kind of what was missing from what I sold, what they did to what I sold. We're about 25,000 members now, sending in a couple of emails a day, supported by a small text ad at the top of each email. We are sold out of ad space till mid-October. And yeah, here we are. Totally not planned, but I've launched a new company, and it seems to be doing very well.
Awesome. Well, let me dig into, I've got like 16 questions through that path, but let me dig into, let's say, the beginning of HARO. Actually, let me go back to the agency. So what was it that allowed you to launch the first agency so quickly? Because you mentioned huge names that were clients. You said you had a PR firm. Seemingly immediately, you got these huge tech companies that were launching in the .com area. How did you do that?
A couple of reasons. Number one, I had experience from America Online. And whether I knew it at the time or not, AOL was a huge force in that moment, right? In 1998, AOL was still very much the internet. It was blowing up to the web, but AOL was still the 600-pound gorilla. And so I came from AOL. I was an AOL noob. I was an AOL 1.0er. I was one of the first 1,000 employees. The second thing is that I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that to start an agency, it's been told that you need to know all the people at your university, and you need to reach out to them and have a network, and you need to have, your MBA from somewhere with people who work at companies who can give you money. I didn't know any of that. Knowing we needed clients, I'd call everyone I knew. And our first client was an ASP, application service provider, and I was going to charge him, I think, like $2,500 a month. And the woman who was the marketing director tipped her hand, and she goes, "Look, I just want to tell you, we can't spend more than we spent on our last agency, and that was $12,000 a month. So if you're planning on coming in at $20,000, like, we're not going to be able to do that." Like, well, shit, okay.
Awesome.
So, it's and that's the beauty of it. And again, that goes back to ADHD. When I finally decided to start Source of Sources back in May, I didn't poll it out. I didn't do a survey. I didn't study it. I said, fuck it, I'll do it. And I launched it. And that's everything I've done, for good or bad, has been like that. And to me, that's the greatest way to live. There are way too many businesses that are dead on the side of the road, not because their ideas weren't great, but because they didn't move quick. And they got caught in decision paralysis, saying, "Well, what if it doesn't work? Fuck, if it doesn't work, I'll do something else. It's Tuesday." I'm looking next to me at this dog, Waffle. Waffle is a rescue dog, about 3 years old. During COVID, my daughter said, or 4 years old. During COVID, my daughter said, "I want a dog." I'm like, "Yeah, well, all the shelters are out of dogs. You're probably not going to get one." I volunteer at a shelter. I volunteer at a place called Best Friends, and I call them like, "Guys, look, I know you have no dogs, and that's fine. I don't want a fucking dog. I'm a cat guy. My daughter wants a dog, so I'm calling you to tell her that I told you that one dog, and you're going to tell me no, we don't have any, right? And if it takes a year, that's fine. Do you understand?" And they go, "No, Peter, we totally get it. It's not a problem." And I'm like, "Cool. Oh, honey, sorry I called, and they don't have any dogs." 3 fucking days later, "Peter, hey, there's a rescue in Florida that just had 4 puppies dropped off, about 8 weeks old." So, yeah, Waffle's taking up my couch, even though he knows he's not supposed to be on my couch. Ignoring me. Little fucker is ignoring me.
Well, the professor is on the chair next to me right here, so I understand.
Absolutely. It's the joke there. It's one of the, for better or for worse, I'm going to try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, great. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, I learned something. And I've just always believed in that.
Okay, so tell me about HARO relative to, fuck it, let's just give it a shot and see if it works. So you moved into a Facebook group pretty quickly. And just for a frame of reference for everybody listening or watching, we're talking 2007, and Facebook launched in 2006. So a Facebook group then, you could post something and literally 100% of the people in the group would see the message.
Not only that, but you're missing the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that back then, every time you posted something, anyone who was a member of that group would get an email telling them that you did.
And so in that era, also emails were opened more than they are now.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Inboxes weren't segmented into promotions.
Correct.
Social, et cetera. It was just you got an email. So you moved it from social into email inbox. Was that where it ended, or did you have a dedicated community? I mean, ultimately you built a website to do this, right?
I built helpareporter.com, which was essentially an email, a one-page website where you'd enter your email address and you'd start getting these queries from me. I would send you 3 emails a day with queries from journalists, and like literally the same thing Source of Sources is right now. It doesn't need to be reinvented. The wheel does not need to be reinvented. It is a simple, if it works, it works. At the end of the day, email is still the killer app. It always will be.
What led you to acquisition for HARO? Did you get solicited by them? Did you look? What were the dynamics around that?
For me, it was one of our largest advertisers was this company called Vocus. And they said, "Hey, look, we're tired of advertising. We just want to buy you." Like, all right, make me an offer. And again, it became the same premise that I could have built it 10 times more, but I would have had to do more of the stuff I didn't want to do. 2-year earnout, which I made an absolutely no problem. I was their VP, and then I could walk if I wanted to.
Most of the time when people get in an earnout situation, they're not happy working for the company afterwards. And they have some dynamic of friction, having a boss, not being able to do things as they want. Did you experience any of that?
Yeah, I definitely did. I mean, all of a sudden, I wasn't in charge of marketing, right? If I wanted to have this great idea, it actually had to go through channels, and that kind of sucked. Especially for someone whose brain runs as fast as mine does. All of a sudden, I'm not allowed to just do something. Like, well, has he gotten back to me? No, you sent the email 2 minutes ago. Well, what's he waiting for? He's the CEO. He has other things to do. So that was sort of a wake-up call. But, it was still the right choice at the time. No question about it.
So you are literally rebuilding this thing today.
Legally, I'm building something newer and better.
Of course. What has changed about your approach, right? 10 years has passed or more, and technology is totally different. Are you approaching it differently now?
Reporters are still having to do more with less, but the sources, the people who get the emails, are also on tighter schedules. And like you said, their inboxes are jammed now. So my goal is to make sure, look, you're going to get this email. It's going to take you 7 seconds to read. Once you read it, you're either going to reply or you're going to delete it, and you're going to go on with your day. I will not take more than 20 seconds a day from you, right? But in those 20 seconds, you could wind up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. It'll never cost you anything. I'm never going to charge you, and I'm going to give you valuable information. And the basics still apply. Give people what they need when they need it, and you're going to help them. I know people who set their alarms because the morning email always goes at 5:45 a.m. I know people who set their alarms to 5:45 a.m., wake up, read the email, scan it, see if they can answer any of the queries. If not, go back to bed or go to the gym. They say they go to the gym, they go back to bed. The goal is, to be able to help someone. Help never goes out of style, and too many companies don't understand that. When was the last time you got an email from a company just saying, "Hey, I want to help you," not "Hey, I want to sell something to you"?
Uncommon for sure.
Yeah. So the premise of being able to say, "Hey, look, it's going to take 7 seconds," but literally you could wind up on the front page of a newspaper or on CNN tomorrow morning.
Got it. And so for those that, never used HARO or don't know the model, can you explain the basics of the model to us? And what's the name of the new company again?
Source of Sources is the new company, SOS. It's at sourceofsources.com. You sign up once, and then you simply get 2 emails a day, one at 5:45 a.m., one at around 12:30 p.m. And those emails have queries from journalists, right? They have queries from journalists that say something like, I'm writing an article for USA Today. I'm looking for a BMW CPO warranty expert needed to weigh in. I need a US-based BMW CPO warranty expert, BMW finance managers, technicians to share unique insights based on their experience of the subject to be considered. What is the BMW CPO warranty covered? What perks does it offer? Things like that, right? So that's a query. If you happen to know this industry, work in that, you're there, right? Fox Business wants to know buying land, buying a house, real estate advice, looking for real estate agents and realtors. What advice do you have for home buyers who would like to buy land and then build their first home? I'm looking for a real estate article for home buyers who are going to build a home this way and want to know the best way to proceed. So if you're a home builder or a land builder or a real estate agent, you can answer these questions. Boom, you just got your company or your name or whatever into the press, into Fox Business. Pretty good audience there. Cost you maybe 5 minutes to write the email and send it, and cost you nothing else.
Your value prop on your end is you've got a ton of reporters, right? You've got a ton of media on one hand that need sources on the other. And then you've got and then I suppose the proposition for me or any expert in the world on any given topic is they're looking for these posts that you send out that say, hey, we need an expert in this space.
Everyone is an expert at something, right? So how would that benefit you to find your name in the New York Times tomorrow as an expert in this industry? Would that help you get more podcast guests? Would that help you get more keynote speeches? Would it help you bring in new consulting clients? What would that do? It costs you nothing to do it, except 20 seconds of your day. And here's the thing. There are other companies out there that since I sold HARO, other companies have popped up and tried to do this. Something like SOS comes with a large portion of trust served on the side.
Sure.
I'm the guy that founded the first one that ever did this, right? People know who I am and they know I'm not going to waste their time. They know it's worth opening my emails. My SOS emails have on average a 65% open rate.
And you said inside of 3 months, you're up to 25,000.
Just under 25,000
users.
Yeah. And we're sold out on ads, like literally small 3-line text ad at the top of every email. We're sold out on them until mid-October.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about your general approach is keep things simple, just start it and move forward. How do you curate those things? How do you keep it simple? Because it seems like, a mass amount of reporters or media outlets and a mass amount of people looking, matching them appropriately would be the challenge.
That's not my job.
Okay.
My job is to send the email to the sources. It's a source's job to say, hey, this guy wants to know about BMW CPO warranties and I work in that industry and know about them. I'll respond. My job is to connect the journalist with that source. Now, it's the journalist's job to make sure that source isn't full of shit. The difference between me and the other sites out there is that if a source is full of shit and responds to that reporter and the reporter says, hey, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just trying to get pressed, you're wasting my time, all they have to do is forward that email to me, and that source is banned for life. Because I don't make money by sending out these emails. I don't make money on a subscription. If you screw up, you're gone, and that does not affect any revenue I bring in. In fact, it actually makes it, the chances are it improves it because it improves the quality of the readers of that email. Yeah,
I guess where my head was is if you've got 10,000 reporters that are making these inquiries on a daily basis or whatever, how do you segment the message that the email is relevant to the potential expert?
It's broken into 5 or 6 categories. I don't remember how many. General, lifestyle, business finance, healthcare, pharmaceutical, tech, travel. You simply, if you don't want to waste your time, if you don't know anything about business and finance, but you know all about travel, just scroll down.
Cool. Well, so let's move past the initial HARO phase. So you sold it because you didn't want to grow the business further, and weren't interested in what activities might have to come with that. Where'd you go from there?
So I started consulting for different companies. I was doing a lot of. I started speaking a ton on customer experience because I built this thing to 250,000 members with a ridiculous open rate and people who trusted me. And so companies started hiring. How do you get such a loyal audience? I'm like, well, you basically don't be a dick. You know that it's. I started speaking, started consulting to companies like Starwood, American Express, Disney. Speaking to all these companies about customer experience, about the new customer economy. Was married at the time, and my marriage wasn't doing that great. Not because I was doing anything stupid, but we just weren't compatible and couldn't figure out why. And that's when I finally got diagnosed with ADHD and realized that all my fuck ups, all my screw ups in my life, everything I did wrong and everything I did right were both a product of my ADHD. And all my success was because of, not in spite of, my neurodiversity. The problem with that is that when you don't know it, you just think you just believe you get really lucky and actually have no skill at all. And so I finally got diagnosed. And as my marriage was ending, I spent a year researching all the stuff that I do that everyone else thinks is weird that I think is normal. Stuff like getting up at 3:45 a.m. to work out because I feel better if I have. Well, it turns out it's not that I feel better. It's because God knows I haven't lost enough weight to say it's working, but I get enough dopamine. The dopamine is how I was self-medicating before I was diagnosed. Some people self-medicate with cocaine. Thank God, I learned to self-medicate with exercise and skydiving and probably entrepreneurship. So I spent some time researching all this, and that turned into my first New York Times bestseller called Faster Than Normal. And Faster Than Normal was a book about sort of the concept of using your neurodiversity, your ADHD, as a gift, not a curse. That led to a whole new chapter in my life where I would go and talk to companies about how to attract, hire, and retain neurodiverse employees. And they loved having me come in and speak, but they didn't want to hire me as a consultant. And I finally figured out why a couple of years ago. I don't have a PhD or any kind of doctor after my name. But an ex-girlfriend of mine does. She's the Today Show psychologist. And so we partnered and we launched a company about a year ago called Mental Capital. And Mental Capital helps companies attract, hire, and retain neurodiverse employees. Our clients currently include Morgan Stanley, Adobe, Google, ad agencies, PR firms. And we're helping them understand that having a neurodiverse workforce is actually a benefit and can actually greatly increase the productivity and output of your company.
Let me start with the foundation of this here. So you live in New York, and people might know what neurodiversity is. I'm in Texas. Just so that we can clarify.
I don't think you're allowed to say the word neurodiversity in Texas. Yeah, you can't say that word there. Neurodiversity is all brains are beautiful. Some brains are a little different. The ones that are different are still beautiful. But in the past, my neurodiversity, which is my ADHD, was in New York City in the 70s, was not ADHD. It was called sit down, you're disrupting the class disease. And over time, we discovered that brains react in different ways. We have only been not hunting for food for about 1,200 years. Prior to that, all we did was hunt for food. A lot of us are still hunters, except we live in a gatherer world now. The gatherer world is that Uber Eats can deliver your food in 5 minutes. There's no excitement there. And so a lot of us are still in a hunter mentality, and we don't actually know how to adjust properly in a environment that over the past 100, 150, 200 years is entirely gatherer focused. The reason that kids go into a classroom and sit in rows in their seats and columns is because 250 years ago, one-room schoolhouses had to get as many kids as possible in that classroom. We still do it the same way for no reason other. And so neurodiversity essentially means that you have a different brain. It could be ADD, ADHD, autism, executive function disorder, dysmorphia, so many different things within the brain, all of which can lead to incredible outcomes if the brains are treated as gifted and not broken.
So let me focus. I want to highlight one thing here, which is the delineation between the term neurodiversity and ADHD. And ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And so the notion here is that neurodiversity is a rebrand or a different way to look at that, in that it's not a disorder, it's just humanity.
People who have disorders are diagnosed with them. I personally feel like I won the lottery. I've never been diagnosed with winning the lottery. I'm never going to get diagnosed with dating a supermodel. Those aren't things that the word diagnosis tends to fit in there. Imagine a world where at 5 years old, we tell the kids not that they're broken, but that they're gifted. And now they don't have to spend the next 30 years of their lives unlearning and undoing all the damage that was given to them because they were told for the last 30 years they were broken. Right? I mean, imagine a world where you're told, yeah, you're gifted, you can do anything, and you actually go on and do, as opposed to having to prove everyone wrong first. I'll give a keynote to 10,000 people. 9,999 of them will stand up and cheer. That one person who's not, he's the one I focus on. Oh, he hated me. No one's going to like me. I'm never going to get another speech again. That goes back to like 6th grade, right? Being told to sit down, just try to sleep. You're disrupting the class. For all I know, that guy who didn't stand up is a paraplegic. But as far as I know, he just didn't like me, right? So it's a hard lesson to learn. And so if we can change that conversation instead of a disorder and say, yeah, you want to hire the neurodiverse employee, you want to hire the autistic employee, they are going to radically think of different ways your company can run and for the better. That's what we need to start doing.
Well, let me ask you a question on that. So I have a very close friend, Cameron Harold, who...
Oh, yeah, Cameron. I've had him on the podcast several times, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, great guy who also self-identifies as having ADHD. And he has a narrative or a story that he tells. I don't even know what to call it. So it's an element of a lot of his talks where he draws the parallel between entrepreneurship and ADHD. It is clear that there are a ton of people running companies that are sort of all over the place entrepreneurs, to the point where it's become a characteristic of most personalities when people think about entrepreneurship. Inside a given company and being an employee, what roles should be linked to something like ADHD and what roles should not?
Well, I'll give you an example. I did not set up this meeting. My assistant did. And that's not because I'm that guy who has his assistant do everything, because I'm not. I like to do everything. But I've had my assistant for 15 years now. 14 and a half years ago, I went to put something on my calendar and it wasn't working. And I texted my assistant, I'm like, hey, something's up with my calendar. It's not working. She's like, no, it's actually working fine. I just took away your right access to it. Like, I'm sorry? She's like, you no longer have right access to your calendar. If you want to do something, you tell me and I'll see if you can do it. And if you can, I'll put it in the calendar. I'm like, that's really rude. She's like, well, Peter, here's the thing. You booked 2 dinners on the same night. I'm like, okay, you're definitely overreacting. 2 dinners on the same night, anyone can make that mistake. And she interrupted me. She goes, Peter, you booked them on separate continents and you're done. And that was the last time I've had right access to my calendar because I don't do that well, right? I will easily double book something. I will show up at one place when I'm supposed to be at another. I will show up at LaGuardia when I'm supposed to fly to Newark. I have systems in place, specifically my assistant and other methods that allow me to run my companies the best way I can because I do the things that I'm great at. I am great at the creative. I'm great at the, hey, let's throw a 400-person event and we'll get this space and we'll go see it. We'll hire it and we'll spend the money. Blah, blah, blah. And I know that is where it's going to stop. And then I'll have a half-written contract or a half-filled-out contract from the space. I have 6 caterers I have to interview, and the conference won't happen. So I create the idea. I come up with the theme. I have all the panels and the tracks, and then I hand it off.
Your assistant's, we got an email from your assistant this morning, and I thought it was great. So it's from your assistant, and then her title is Calming Influence to Peter Shankman.
100%. 100%. When I was running HARO and she worked in my apartment, she worked in my 2nd bedroom, in my 2-bedroom up in the Upper West Side. Whenever someone would write something negative about me on a comment or whatever, or on a blog, I've stopped reading them since, but she would hear me what she called typing with purpose, which clearly meant that I was pissed off and I was immediately anger replying and wasn't thinking about what I was saying and it was going to come back to bite me. And she would pull the router. Why is the fucking thing working? God damn it, I hate it. Peter, go take a walk. Come back in 20 minutes. I'm sure the router will be working and then we can decide if you really want to send whatever it was you were typing. And she said this with this calm sort of like oh God, I want to punch the fuck out of her. But she's 100% right every single time. I would not be remotely as successful. I wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for Megan. There's no question about it. She has figured out what I need. And that being said, she's constantly in awe of my brilliance when it comes to things I'm good at.
Yeah, well, when do you decide when to focus on the things that you're good at versus trying to get better at the thing that you're not good at?
Once every year or so, I'll try to get better at the thing I'm not good at. It'll last about 6 hours. I'll get sick of it and I'll pass it off.
I
And,
love it.
and dude, that doesn't mean that I'm lazy or anything like that. It just means that I know that, like, if it's gonna take me 4 hours to do one scheduling thing or whatever, and Megan can get it done in 8 minutes, I'm a skydiver. I go to the drop zone upstate. I jump. I'll do like 5 jumps in a day. In order to get your license, you have to learn how to pack your parachute, right? It's a very specific process. I learned to pack my parachute. You have to pack it and then jump your own parachute to prove you can do it. So I learned, went through the process, taught myself how to pack it, got lessons, packed my parachute, jumped it, and opened. On average, it takes me about 45 minutes and a lot of cursing to pack my parachute. I'm not a tiny guy, right? So the bigger you are, the heavier your parachute. My parachute is 229 square feet, and I'm trying to put that into a bag roughly the size of my dog. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour to get through it. Or I pay the packers they have at the drop zone $10 per job, $10 per jump, and they pack it for me in 6 minutes. I know it's going to open. I know it's going to work perfectly, and I'm back on the next plane 20 minutes later. What's my time worth? What's more valuable to me? Am I going to get 2 jumps in a day, or am I going to get 6? Same thing with Megan. Same thing with my assistants. Same thing with the people I hire to do the stuff that I'm not great. I know what I'm not great at, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
Well, so back to you consulting for all these companies around having a diverse workforce. What you just described can work very well for an entrepreneur. If I'm hiring somebody, what I don't want them to do is ignore the things that they don't want to do and only do the things that they do want to do.
Well, you got to realize neurodiverse means all forms of neuro, all different types of brains, including the type of brain that wants to do nothing but stare at a spreadsheet for 8 hours a day. I have a friend named Cheryl, and literally that is what she's done with her life for the past 30 years. She's a financial CPA something for like huge companies. She goes in, stares at spreadsheets, makes decisions for 8 hours a day, and comes home. I would have blown my brains out 28 years ago, 2 years into that. She gets off on it. Different brains, man. I will hire the people that love to do the stuff I hate because they're great at it and they enjoy it. I don't know how to do my health insurance. You kidding me?
So tell me some of the common diagnoses and what roles they would be good at.
You know what? I'm not a doctor, so I won't do that. But what I will tell you is this: you hire people who love the roles that you have for them. One of the financial companies I'm working with, that our company is working with, we did a all company seminar to their like 80,000 employees about what managers can learn, how managers can deal better, not with neurodiverse employees, but how managers can deal better with caregivers of neurodiverse employees, right? Of the mom who has a 6-year-old autistic kid who once a month or so is going to completely lose his shit at school and need to be picked up. Dad of the 17-year-old kid who is in serious therapy to control his outbursts or his rage or whatever, and needs time to be able to handle that with his son. And can he work from home a couple of days? So it's not just about, I don't want a workforce that's entirely neurodiverse. We'd never get anything done. Or we'd come up with great ideas and never implement them. I want a workforce that is neuro-inclusive, which has neurodiverse, neurotypical, has everyone. And they work together as a seamless. That's the goal, right? Chances are the CFO of any given Fortune 500 is not neurodiverse at all. Most people with numbers, I mean, there's some levels of neurodiversity that love numbers, but CFO, most C-suite is not neurodiverse. But the C-suite needs to understand that the marketing department, that the coding department, the tech department, chances are they all are. And that's good.
Tell me about, so you mentioned in the 70s growing up, ADHD was sit your ass down and stop disrupting the class. In 1980, it was the beginning of ADHD as a diagnosis. It was formalized in the DSM-3R at that point. If you look at the statistics of people being considered ADHD, it has gone through the roof from 1980 to 2020. So it went from 1.5% in 1980 to 3% in 1990 to 9 to 10% in 2020.
Yeah, it actually didn't go through the roof until the past 10 years. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the first is because for the first time, a lot of people feel comfortable enough to talk about mental health. We never talked about mental health in the past. All right, go watch Mad Men. The alcoholic was sent to a camp to dry out. Right? What's the great line? This never happened. You'll be amazed how much this never happened. The woman, God forbid, who had mental health issues was sent to a sanatorium. We didn't discuss mental health. We didn't wear our T-shirts that said ADHD and proud, or ADHD in the style of AC/DC. We didn't talk about it. I always knew I was different. I was fortunate that I went to a performing arts high school where everyone was different, so it wasn't as terrible. But we didn't talk about mental health, and we are finally starting to talk about mental health. Simone Biles is very open about her ADHD. I've had countless people on the podcast. I mean, Faster Than Normal has over 350 episodes now, all of whom are neurodiverse. Every single guest, and we've had Dave Needleman, who founded JetBlue. We've had Seth Godin. We've had the mayor of Boston. We've had like the band Shinedown. All these people. Just because you can't find your keys when you get home doesn't mean you're ADHD. It could mean that you're an idiot. You just need to hang up a hook next to your door. All right. So I agree. I don't like people who put it down and say, "Oh, I must be having an ADHD moment." No, you're not. Stop it. You'd never say you're having a cancer moment, right? Don't say you're having an ADHD moment. But I look at it along lines of, I was having this conversation when Tim Walz was picked for VP, and the Republicans went on the whole tirade about how he allowed free feminine hygiene products in the bathrooms, and oh my God, he must be Satan. I mentioned on Threads how back when my daughter was 8, she's 11 now, when she was 8, and I was a single dad. When she was 8, I was at a drugstore by myself, waiting for a prescription, and there weren't many people working, weren't many customers there. So I started talking to the pharmacist, and I asked her, I'm like, I'm just curious. My daughter's still 8; she's got a few years, but do you have 5 minutes? You want to teach me like what I need to know, like when that day does come? She's like, oh, absolutely. And she went out and she showed me, this is what you could use. This, light flow, heavy flow, wings. Became vastly knowledgeable about when my daughter starts that process. And I joke about it. I was like, yeah, I had an ADHD moment and figured I might as well ask. Well, that's an ADHD positive moment, right? And I love that about me. I love that just came out of my mouth. What do I have to lose?
Well, so the fundamental difference between, saying I had a cancer moment and I had an ADHD moment is ADHD is a list of criteria that you might meet. That is not how cancer is defined.
Exactly.
Right? So you look at the definition, and I think this is an important point, because I see both things happening with the conversation with you. Like the overarching is, I don't like hearing it as a disease or a diagnosis. And that's sort of the point of the label neurodivergent. How do you think about drugs as they work with that label?
I am not anti-med. I have a prescription for ADHD medication. I'm supposed to take it daily. I take it 2 or 3 times a month. My assistant actually puts on my calendar, when on the off chance she has to schedule 3 or more meetings in a day, she puts on my calendar pill day with a reminder the night before that it would be better if I took a pill to help manage my ADHD, because 3 meetings is hell on anyone. Better living through chemistry is a fine concept, but I don't think it should be the first line of defense. We're putting 5-year-olds on methamphetamines, which is essentially what ADHD medications are. And we're doing that because sometimes they're just acting like they're 5. Problem is, we're putting them on these meds, and they stay on these meds till about 25. And then they're kicked off their parents' insurance, and they might not have the ability to get back on the meds, but they also haven't learned anything between age 5 and age 25. Pills don't teach skills. I have no problem with medication, but it has to come in partnership with the understanding of why your brain works differently and the things you can do without the medication to help get to that point. And those are the things that I wound up doing most of my life without realizing it, and I always thought I was weird for it. And then when everything clicked in, I'm like, well, shit, this makes perfect sense. There's a reason that my lights come on automatically, start coming up in a sunrise pattern at 3:45 a.m., and I'm on the bike by 4:30 every morning. And I sleep in my bike shorts to make sure I don't forget to do that, not because I want to exercise every morning, because I like how I feel better, and I'm more productive and a better dad and everything with that. So I have no problem with medication at all, but it has to go hand in hand with children, adults, whatever, being able to understand that you have a brain that works differently than the norm. And if you are taught to drive a Honda Accord your whole life, there are certain things about the Honda Accord, you need to floor it to get up to highway speed. If one day you're given a Lamborghini and you drive it the same way you're driving a Honda Accord, it's not going to end well. If you floor that to get up to highway speed, you're going to be 2 miles down the road wrapped around a tree. You have to learn how to drive your brain differently. Medication can help you do that, but it's not the only arsenal or not the only arrow in your quiver, and it can't be.
How do you think about navigating ADHD with a child versus an adult?
We need to teach the children that are not broken, they're gifted. Again, for the simple reason that they won't spend the next 30 years trying to undo that damage. Adults need to understand that they're going to have a long road ahead of them of getting themselves out of that mental place, that mental black hole that says, yeah, everything I've done wrong is because I'm stupid. I'm 52. I still go through that every once in a while. It's mind blowing. The thing about ADHD is that sometimes, the goal is to stay on the track and to have markers in place to keep you going straight down the path, because when you go off the track, sometimes it's really hard to get back on it. I landed a massive account once and I was so excited. I've been trying to get it for weeks and I landed it. And all I wanted to do was tell my at the time, my wife about it. And my wife had a habit of not picking up her cell phone that often. It used to drive me crazy. And so I call her, doesn't answer her cell phone. So I'm like, all right, this is important. I'm going to call her office. I call her desk, she doesn't answer. I call her cell phone again, no answer. I send her an email. By this point, I'm off the rails. I send her an email. I really thought I wanted to share this with you. I really got this amazing account. This is incredible. I've been trying to do this for months. I wanted to share my joy with you. You're the only person I really want to share with it. You obviously don't give a shit. So I don't even know why I'm bothering. Goodbye. Hung up the phone or sent the email. Now, 30 seconds later, the phone rings. Hey, honey, I was in an impromptu meeting with my boss. I noticed that you called. You sent me an email too. Let's say, what the fuck is wrong with you, Peter? That was literally how it happened, right? Because in my head, we got married, divorced, and broken up and got divorced in a matter of like 8 seconds. Sometimes that's what happens. And so as much as I learn those skills, as much as anyone learns those skills, sometimes you're just going to have a bit of a day.
Okay, let's pull it back to business, because you spend a lot of your time consulting major companies around how to navigate this. What is the most important element of having a diverse workforce?
A lot of it is removing preconceived notions, understanding that not everyone is going to be like you. And just because they're not like you doesn't mean they don't have a similar or even better way of doing that same job. One of my favorite stories, I was probably 17. I was working a summer job in Manhattan at a yogurt store. And it was boring, whatever, but it gave me some cash. And manager was a dick. But what I remember, I was cleaning up the back one day and I came across a small can of polish, like gold. There was an awning out front and two gold poles, like a lot of places in New York used to have. And the poles, hold the awning up. And the poles are dirty as hell, right? Years of abuse from exhaust fumes or whatever. So I saw this gold polish. So one day, we're not that busy. I go outside, I take a rag and I start polishing the poles. They look amazing. And I'm almost done with the second pole. And the boss, what are you doing? Polishing the poles. They were kind of gross. I figured maybe if they're shinier, people would. I don't pay you to think. Get your ass back in or you're fired. I was so angry. I think I quit a couple of days later. I was going to college anyway. It didn't matter. But I'm like, why wouldn't he see what I was trying to do? Learned a valuable lesson that day. Don't waste your time trying to speak butterfly to caterpillar people. There are some people who are never going to understand your brand of magic. Try not to associate with them. But any boss I'd ever have, if I ever took a full-time job again, first thing I'd say, I'd go to the boss and say, look, just want to let you know, I do things a different way. I'm not telling you I want to change everything, but I'm saying sometimes it might seem weird if I'm doing a certain way. Ask me about it before you get upset. Let's talk about what I'm doing, and I'll explain it to you. I have to do it, but my brain works a little differently than yours. And I think that it's getting even easier to have that conversation. From the clients that I've seen, it's definitely getting easier to have that conversation because companies are starting to understand that neuroinclusivity actually is a tide that raises all boats, and that's awesome.
What are some tips to managing a more diverse workforce?
Make sure you're open to listening to your employees. Your employees have to know they can talk to you. They have to feel they can talk to you. They have to believe they can talk to you. If they don't, they're going to clam up. They're going to be afraid. Be willing to listen. Be willing to understand. Even be willing to learn. Right, the things you don't necessarily understand. Be willing to learn about them. To me, understanding how your team works and letting them work the way they want is the absolute best thing you can do for any business.
What are some tips to finding a neurodiverse group of employees to hire?
The nice thing about it is success begets success. So as you start creating a neuro-inclusive workforce, the people who work there are going to talk about it, and they're going to share that. And one of the first things you could do is go internal for your hires. Talk to the people who work for you and say, hey, I'm looking for someone just like you, right? Do you know anyone? Right. And I know you have to post
most people don't have neurodiverse or I have ADHD on their resume, right?
No, but my point is you be open about it. You're not saying I'm looking for someone who's ADHD like you. I'm looking for someone who works the same way as you, who's as motivated and productive as you. Because the fact of the matter is that we seek each other out. I call it ADHD DAR. We find each other. I can tell in 5 seconds, right? People want to work for companies they trust, and people learn to trust companies from the people who their friends are who already work there. You tell me you're a great neurodiverse and neurochampion company, I'm not going to believe you unless you're someone I know, unless I trust you. If it says in your ad, we respect all cultures, no, you don't. But if I hear it, if I see it from someone I trust, that's the neurodiversity pipeline. So, to be able to grow that starts with letting your employees talk to you, letting them learning how things are different, all that stuff.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to wrap with a couple quick ones from you. What do you think the biggest mistake is that you've made through your business career? And what did you learn from it?
Most definitely hiring people who I assumed would have the same passion as I did about my project. No one is ever going to have the same amount of passion for your project as you do. You can hire people with passion and they will work, but it's very rare that it means that you could just say, okay, you got this, I'm going to do something else. You'll find people over time who you can mold to care about what you're building the same way you do. But you're never going to hire someone to replace you if you get hit by a milk truck who has the same level of passion as you do. So never lose that passion. If you find that passion waning, ask yourself if it's time to do something else.
What do you think the best thing that you've ever done in business is?
Back before Twitter was a hellscape, I once jokingly sent a tweet to Morton's Steakhouse that said, hey, I'm about to board a 3-hour flight back to Newark. Can you meet me with a porterhouse when I land? Because I'm starving. And they did. But that actually raised Morton's revenue by over 10% over the course of the year. But that wasn't planned. No, I'd say the best thing I ever did was learning at a very early age, learning from Steve Case and Ted Leonsis, my 2 bosses at AOL, that your goal is to create something good that helps people. And it is very rare that creating something good that helps people will not also generate revenue. But if you go into something only looking to generate revenue, it's not going to be as great as you think. Go in trying to solve a problem that people have. So I've tried to do that with everything I built, whether it was HARO, SOS, Mental Capital. The goal is to try and solve a problem that people have with care and with empathy.
Peter Shankman, I appreciate your time, man. It's been awesome.
Good talking to you again, man.
Where do you want to point people? Yeah, it's great to see you. It's long overdue.
So sourceofsources.com is how to sign up and get free media. Mental Capital Consulting is the firm for neurodiversity in employment. And then my life is at shankman.com. I'm at Peter Shankman on all the socials except Twitter. I post a lot on Instagram. I'm a huge user of Threads. You can find me in the metaverse, the Fedverse rather. Not in the metaverse. Fedverse, pretty much anywhere. So just at Peter Shankman and you'll see me everywhere.
Love it, Peter. Until next time.
All right, Brad. Good talking to you.